I'm here today with Deno Hewson, this guy right here. He is an executive coach, executive performance coach at Summit Culture. And I wanted to take the time today to ask him a few questions about exactly what that is and also how career, work-life balance, all of that, how that relates to someone's mental health. I'm sure he has a lot to say, right? So, Dino, first question.
Yes, sir.
What actually is executive coaching for people that don't know what it is? And who are the type of people that you work with?
Even within the world of executive coaching, there's a lot of different definitions. What it is that we do, the Summit Culture approach, is what we call performance coaching. Now, performance coaching, we're working with organizations and helping the people within those organizations. So, in other words, we're not taking private engagements. Organizations then come to us and say, can you work one on one with some of the leaders within our organizations?
As a follow up to that, is there a typical type of client that you have? Who are I understand that it's organizations that are your clients, but the people, what are the people like that you're working with?
So, one of the things about coaching and performance coaching specifically is that we work with individuals who are already, by and large, performing well. We're not being brought in to fix a problem. So, that's a really important part of sort of the tenet of executive coaching is that we are here working with men and women within the organization who are typically already doing their job pretty well. And through the process of coaching, which is a fairly long engagement, can be sort of 6 or could be 12 months, we're working with those people to uncover what we refer to as marginal gains or additional opportunities to elevate. So if their performance is already here, which is considered good or well above the expectation, then we're looking for them to get to here. And what does that look like in their world of work?
So recently, I've noticed a culture of a lot of coaches coming out. Not necessarily executive coaches, but relationship coaches, love coaches, sex coaches, career coaches, these types of things. And I feel that's different from what you're doing specifically.
Yes, it is.
But with those type of coaches, I think there's a lot of therapeutic value that people are getting from it. You're working with people on a big part of their life, their identity, which is their job. And people at these high levels, it's probably a pretty big part of their life. Yeah. So, how does executive coaching impact mental health, or how is it similar to therapy? Is there any overlap?
So, firstly, as executive coaches and performance coaches, we're not trained in therapy and particularly around counseling and sort of fixing of issues. And I think that's a really important point to start at. That provides a safety because also we have to make sure that our clients don't come in expecting for that to be part of the package. We're helping men and women in business who are already operating at a pretty good level to look at issues that are either maybe in the shadows, maybe there's a blind spot. It's something that, in order for them to make a further step, they would need to examine as to their approach. But specifically to answer your question, where some of the overlap does exist, it's around the fact that, yes, your workplace is such an important part of you as a person. Your identity is that, oh, I am so and so, I work at this place, my job is this, my title is that. So, therefore, when things are not optimal, or maybe we have some fears about the future, that sometimes can outsize the way in which we think about it. It can dramatize it. And as a coach, my job is to help that person to understand what the real issue is, to maybe right size it for them, to help them to think about some optionality for how they would wish to proceed, for them to think about who in the organization might be able to also support them in that. And what I do find is that, as they say, it's lonely at the top, right? So we're dealing with a lot of people who are kind of bosses, whatever that might mean. Who can they talk to? They can't go home and talk to their significant other because they're like, oh, this happened at work. And the person's like, well, I don't really understand what you do at work. They can't talk to their team because their team's like, okay, isn't the boss supposed to understand what it is that I do?
They have all the answers.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can't go to the board or other members of the C suite and saying, hey, I really don't know what's going on here because they're expected to.
Yeah.
So therefore, working with a coach in that way, so we are confidential, which would be similar to other sort of, therapists and other people who do stuff of that nature. Now, we are also focused on the work happiness and the work productivity of that person.
Work happiness, is that measured in some kind of way or just
So it really depends on how the organization is thinking about the engagement. It really depends on the measures that are set up front. And we do have sort of objectives for coaching. So across the course of the 6 to 12 months engagement, there are certain areas of that person's performance or ways of working or ways of being a leader that I will be focused on. So therefore, those are the sort of things that when we think about, is the person doing the right stuff? Are they approaching it in the right way? Is the organization getting the yield? Is the person also feeling like she or he is operating better? And therefore, as we said about identity before, therefore they're probably going to feel happier about being at work.
what you said about confidentiality, very important. You also said before that the companies are the ones that come and that they find you, and they're the ones that are paying for the engagement, have the contract. When you meet with a client for the first time, how do you work with them to let them know things are completely confidential, even though they are not the ones paying for it?
Firstly, best practice and what we do would say that the client should meet at least 3 different coaches. So there's an aspect of that, whether they actually feel the chemistry, we actually call it chemistry meetings. So in other words, do I feel that this person being the coach, do I feel that the coach brings what it is that I'm looking to sort of work on in such a way in terms of his or her style that I can relate, all right?
Okay.
During that initial chemistry meeting, me as the coach, it's also my job to help the person to understand some of the boundaries around the engagement. One being that everything that we talk about specific to their situation sits between the two of us. All right. It's typically not recorded, and certainly none of it is going back to the organization. In corporate coaching and sort of performance coaching, which is what we do, there are other parties involved. One of those parties would be the sponsor of the engagement. Now, typically that will be the more senior person. That might be that person's boss. It might be the chairperson of the board. That is someone who is involved in the oversight of the engagement. Now, we're not reporting back to that person, but they do know what's going to be discussed in terms of the objectives. So confidentiality, super important, all right? They also need to understand that we have ethical obligations to, in other words, to report anything that was to be like, if we knew of something that was illegal activity, that's obviously outside the boundary of
Sure.
confidentiality. But other than that, what we talk about in the session stays between the two of us.
That's very similar to just a normal therapeutic relationship as well, where if there are things of an illegal nature, if someone is contemplating taking their own life, hurting someone else, that will be outside of the confidentiality, ethical issues that we all abide by, for sure. I know you talked before about career is a massive part of someone's life. Based on your experience, it could be your personal experience working with people, speaking to friends, you have this very interesting perspective that a lot of people don't see. How would you say that career has an impact on someone's mental health?
Because we spend so much time at work, and many of us come from cultures where work success is sort of tied directly, positively correlated to personal success. Not all cultures are like that, but many of them are, certainly. And many of the clients that I have are people who come from those cultures. So therefore, when things get bumpy, or even if things get uncertain, it's not even that they're necessarily bad, it's just not as good as it was. There's this doubt that comes in. There's this feeling of either I'm letting myself down or I'm letting those around me down, I'm letting my team down or whatever. And so that can quite quickly take people to a place where they're catastrophizing or they're thinking about things that aren't actually part of the reality. So there is a huge link there. And sometimes the case will happen where performance coaching may turn into something else. And it's the case of where I would be like, you know what? I think we should put that coaching on the side you might want to seek the help of another type of professional, mental health professional. So it's kind of my duty of care as a performance coach to understand when we're maybe veering towards an area that I'm not qualified for, and I'm unable to assist that person in the best way that she or he would truly need.
So if someone is catastrophizing, has imposter syndrome, is dealing with marital issues, has problems with the kids, and that type of thing is impacting their work, would that be what you would say that would be outside of the performance coaching? Or
No. Yes, some of it, no. Catastrophizing in general, we all do that. And we all don't think that our job maybe is quite what we wanted it to be, or we all have bad days at work and all that stuff. That's definitely in scope of what I do, right?
Okay.
If people ask about things that are purely outside of work and have very little relation back to the workplace, then I would quite quickly advise them to speak to another person, or at least let them know that that's outside the boundary of where I'm able to probably best support.
So what you are doing, most of that has to be almost 100% centered around coaching how to perform better in the office.
Yes, sir.
What are some signs that someone might notice in themselves where they might need someone like you, a performance coach? And are there ways for people to go through and work with their company to get that sort of help?
Again, putting the commercials aside, it's our opinion that everyone should have a coach. You think about people in sports. It's not only people who are doing a particular element of sports that have coaches. Pretty much everyone who's a sports related as an athlete, she or he is going to have a coach, right? So the idea in business is that certainly as you become more elevated, as you maybe are preparing for a next role, a transition role, you're preparing for something that's got larger in scope than your current focus. It may be that a coach is of use to you in that time. Sometimes when people are being prepared for either a larger role or a different role, an organization can come to us and say, yes, we'd like to talk to you to discuss this with our person. Now, individuals often get in touch with us first, and we always have the same comment, which is, firstly, we'll understand what the nature of the potential engagement is, but then it is contracted through the organization. So we're not going to say to you, oh, and now just you individual write a check for us and we're good.
Give us a brief, give us a check, good to go. Yeah.
No, there's a much more transparent and corporate sponsored engagement process that we go through. And that provides both support to the individual, and it provides a real transparency as to how their resources is being used.
And actually, one last thing. You mentioned before, it's all being sponsored by companies. People are also coming to you looking for this, but at the end of the day, they're looking for a return, right? They're looking to spend their money to get value, to increase productivity, to increase ROI, to increase revenue. What are the types of return that a company or an individual, I guess more of an individual, what are the type of return that they can actually expect?
Every engagement being different, and we do set the objectives up front, but typically you're looking at the way in which they make decisions. Sometimes it's around speed of decision making. It's also often, quite interestingly, around retention of their better talent. So if you're a leader in an organization, say, and you manage sort of a couple of hundred people or whatever, you're always going to have some degree of turnover. So having turnover is not a bad thing, right? But if you're losing your better people, then that is a bad thing. So if you're able to measure something around the way in which that leader, she or he, is engaging with the people, and if that's having a positive impact on the retention of the people they want to keep, then that might be and we often see that. That's one that we really would like to be able to think that people want to work for great leaders, right? And therefore, what are we doing as coaches to support that person to be that better leader? So that's one of the types of measures that we might focus on.
That was Ask an Expert with Deno Hewson, who is a executive performance coach, making us all do our bests day to day, career wise. He laughs, but it's true. He's made me such a better person. So, Dino, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy guy.
That's all good. Thank you.
All right. Before we sign off, how can people find you?
Thank you, Will. I think that the more we can help people to understand around that whole spectrum of the type of support, from therapy through performance coaching and everything out there, it's good for everyone. So thanks for doing this. How can people find me? So Summit Culture is the company that I work at. We're based in Hong Kong. We have people all across Asia Pacific. All right. So the website is summitculture.com, or you can look me up. I'm on LinkedIn.
Dino, thank you so much. So everyone check out summitculture.com. And I believe, what do you guys do? You get shit done, right?
We get shit done. That's right.
All right. So if you want to get shit done, find this guy. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Dino.